she coordinates that for the other sales staff. And our sales staff here is just excellent as far as the jobs they do is putting together promotions and bringing in revenue. So this is her. And then I guess we'll go right in here,
okay,
if that's all right. This is one of the main production rooms that we have. And this is actually where we record a lot of things. Scott comes in here to record his sports in the morning. We use Adobe Audition is our main editing that we have. And we also, right now, Lindsay, who I just was talking about, she's actually on leave of absence. She just had a child. So she's out right now. That's why she's not here. And so I'm filling in for her on Bob FM. We have a radio station, 97.5 Bob FM. And right now I'm filling in for her on the middays and hosting that show. So I voice track that show from here every single day. So there's just all kinds of production that we do in this room. We record Edward Jones when they call in with business reports. They record commercials, they edit commercials in here. So a lot of things will happen production-wise in this room that can go out to all the radio stations as well. We're all connected. So if I record an ad here that needs to play in Sterling, I can record it here, send it to Sterling, and they can put it in. It can be scheduled in traffic, so on and so forth. So that's the main goal behind this room here, is just to put out product on the air, you know, and how we do that. So
awesome. Let me get a good look at that.
You betcha. You betcha.
So this is exactly what? Tell us about this.
Like, for instance, if I'm going to voice track, we pop open our program here, and I can go into voice tracker. And then what this program will allow me to do is I can go through any of our radio stations here and select when I would like to record. Like this is the log that we have for our Bob station. And I go in here and I select the day. I can go into any day I want to, as long as there's a log in there to work with. Like there is one for tomorrow. Then I can go in and I can record a voice track. I can just click on an item and record a voice track, insert it in between the songs or in between the breaks and that kind of a thing. And it's kind of set in stone and will air when you want it to. Mic button, so on and so forth. There's phone, radio. We have them pretty labeled. There's a lot more switches than we use sometimes, but this is pretty much what we'll use and how we can hear all the audio as well. So there you go.
Awesome.
And it looks complicated, but once you get to knowing these things, you get to working on it, it's nothing. It's like anything else, any other job you have. People think, oh my God, that's a lot to think about. It is at first, but like every job you've ever had, once you get into it, it'll be like second nature to you. So don't let that intimidate you by any stretch. So, all right, coming in here, excuse the mess. This is my office, so to speak, or my production area. This is where I come in. I usually work Monday through Friday. I come in, my shift is from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. generally speaking, but I'm up at 3:45. I'm here at 4:30. I'm one of those people, I like to get to work, get the coffee going and kind of get the juices flowing, pop everything open, make sure everything's working. So when 5 o'clock comes, I can kind of start things and get going for the day. And then I just look through all the different sources I have for news as far as what I will read for the day. It can come from many different areas. See, just pop in here. And again, like I said, it looks really rough and really whatever, but it works. And that's the main thing. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to work. So what I'll do is I'll just pop on many of my websites that I go to across Northeast Colorado. From the weather, this is where I got my weather advisory for Northeast Colorado today. You know, just different sites, the local paper sites, network sites, different newspapers. You know, we do look at Facebook. We look at all the different local areas around here. And let's see, other places that we have our own, you know, I look at Google Maps. I was a traffic reporter for 8 years in the Denver metro area. So I worked for traffic. I was actually at the iHeart building. I was working for Total Traffic and Weather Network, which is a subsidiary of iHeart. And I did that for 8 years. So I look at Google Maps and traffic maps a lot just because it's in my nature, but it also helps if you see a slowing on the highway and you see it's a possible crash or construction, that might be a news source you can report on. So you can get news from any different sources, multiple sources across the area. From, you know, I also am on CDOT's website and you know, different the weather radar sites. So just all over the place. And then when I record, I pop open Adobe Audition and I'll record my news, and I have to get it down to a certain amount of time. So I got to make sure that I know the program. My recommendation to anyone getting into broadcasting, no matter what school you go to, whether it's a broadcast school or college or whatever, make sure you know how to work this editing software. It is the spine of what we do. And it doesn't matter how many, how do I put this? Not to knock any 4-year degrees, but if you don't know how to do this kind of thing after a 4-year degree, people may not be interested in you. So know how to do this kind of work, know how to edit, know how to record, know how to get a segment down to exactly 2 minutes when you need to, know where to cut, know where to space your voice to make it sound good, learn how to cut a commercial, learn on this type of software. We use Adobe Audition, which in my opinion is amongst the best software, but there's also Pro Tools, there's Wavestar, there's all different kinds of editing software. For the most part, they're all pretty much basically the same. So if you can learn on one, you'll pretty much get it for everything else. So my recommendation to anybody who wants to get into this, be it radio or television or anything where you have to edit audio. I know a lot of people like to do podcasts as well, that kind of a thing. But if you can learn how to edit audio on your own, that's going to be a good chunk of what you can do. It's part of the reason I was able to come back here to Northeast Colorado, because the boss knew, hey, if I hire him back, I don't have to teach him this stuff. So there you have it right there. Also work on your voice, which is not going to be perfect all the time. I tell you what, I screw up all the time. You're going to screw up all the time. That's okay. That's why you want to edit that stuff out. Oh, another thing, don't cuss. I have seen many people be let go because they let a curse word out or two on the air. They didn't review their work. So always review your work and make sure you always remember that a microphone can be on at any time.
So is your day-to-day the same all of the time? Like, do you come in and you look at the news and you gather what you're going to say?
For the most part, yeah. As far as this part of my job, it depends upon the day of the week and the time of the month. My job isn't necessarily just Monday through Friday, 5 to 1. It can be, but I also, like yesterday, for instance, I attended a 2-hour commissioners meeting from 9 to almost 11 o'clock in the middle of the day. So I had to go there and, record that, take notes, come back here, and actually finished writing that story, which ended up being 4 pages in large print. I'm 50 years old, so I need to, I need to have large print. So, but yeah, so it depends. Like for instance, next week, next Monday, I'll come into work my normal shift, and then that evening I'll go to a school board meeting at 7 o'clock. The next day I'll have another commissioners meeting in the morning, so I'll leave here to work, come back, write that story, and then later on that evening I'll have a city hall meeting I'll attend. I could also have a station function I'll have to attend. So your schedule especially in small and medium market radio, can be all over the place. It can be all over the place in big market radio as well. But it just depends on what's going on. So there's no set schedule as far as what I do every day, depending upon what the schedule is for the station as a whole. And on our company in Media Logic, Wayne likes to have us all informed. So every Monday we have a conference call as a staff across all of our stations to kind of review what we have to go over for the week. That way we know, hey, Pete, I need you. Can you come out to Ray on Wednesday to help me out with this promotion or whatever? So we kind of all leave ourselves open to what we need to do, as well as keeping in mind of what we have to do. Like Scott, for instance, all the sports guys, they got to travel all over the state, reporting games. They do play-by-play for all the games. So if you're a sports guy, if you're a sports person, I should say, and you really want to get your cut your teeth as far as announcing, work in a small medium market, because I tell you what, Friday Night Lights exists big time out here. People will tune in to the radio high school programs. I mean, they do everything from football, basketball, boys, girls, wrestling, you name it. I mean, they'll put it on. They'll put it on, and there's an audience for it out here, and they love it. It's a money revenuer or money generator, and also it's a good way for you to get your chops on. It's not my bag. I'm not a sports play-by-play person. I'm not a sports guy necessarily, but if you want to get into sports, which I know a lot of people do in this business, I tell you what, I can't recommend it more. Just starting out in a small market, calling high school sports, I tell you what, that's the way. If you want to go on, I think we had a guy that was working here for a while that actually went on to ESPN from here. So it's possible. You can always go to the big markets, but you could also always come back to the small markets, which is what I did, and I'm glad I did come back. So anyway, there
Right.
you go.
So how you mentioned attending community meetings and such like that.
Mhm.
How is that an important role in your job? Like, what are you doing when you go? What information are you gathering?
Sure, sure. Well, it's local information. It could be local for the city. Like KFTM is really geared towards Fort Morgan. So, anything that happens in the Fort Morgan area, Brush area, in and around the immediate area around here, will go on KFTM. But you can go to a county meeting that'll be something that might be interested, or people might be interested in the other stations we have. So the thing you get out of it is local information. People like that local information, want to know what's happening locally. And that's where we come from. Like if you go to Denver, the Denver News will report on Denver News, local stories. Well, we do that here too, but we also concentrate on the local stories of Fort Morgan in the Sterling area and Ray area. So if I hear anything out in those locations that might affect, news out there, or might be newsworthy out there, that's the kind of thing I'm doing. And also it's being seen by the people in locally. They're like, hey, there's that guy over at KFTM. I see him all the time, or he's always at the city hall meetings. It's just kind of putting your face out there. It's that big fish in a small pond kind of a thing, in the sense, you just getting yourself out there. And then it's easier to get stories too. Once people see, oh, that's the news guy. Hey, why don't you call him and let him know about this thing that happened? So it's a great, how do you call it? Just connecting up with other people, just getting to be out there and being seen. So that's one of them. I hope I'm explaining this right.
For sure, it's great. Thank you.
So
So for Lindsay, then in a sales role, it's important for her as well to get out there and
oh my gosh, yeah, the salespeople to get out there. Yeah, absolutely. To be known in the community. And that's the thing. The salespeople that come in and they get out there and they sell and they get to know people in the community, and they're part of these promotions. That's the other thing salespeople do. They create these promotions, these events for our listeners to come to, and people see us there and they get to know us. They get to know the salespeople and they get to know the staff, in the sense that he's the owner, he's the morning guy, she's the salesperson, he's the news guy, he's one of the sports guys, that kind of a thing. So it really helps for all of us to be out there, be seen, and let the community know that we're here as part of your community, and we're also here to do some fun stuff for you, as well as inform you and do the business end of it, like this stuff. So
awesome.
yeah.
So with that said, I know that there's various roles, various jobs that you can have within radio.
Mhm.
So aside from news and sales and sports, what else is there?
Oh my gosh. Well, let's see. There's traffic, which traffic is not traffic reporting like what I did. Traffic is actually the logs, scheduling all the commercials in and putting them in so that they play properly. So there's actually, you don't have to be on air or be a radio person to work in radio. We have people that work in this company, and it's a very small company, that don't like to be on air, don't even want to be around a microphone when it's on, but they're still an integral part of what we do. Sales, promotions, sports, being on the air, and depending upon the show you might do. And we'll take you in here in a couple of minutes, and I'll introduce you or show you John Waters, show you the main studio that we have in there. So, gosh, I mean, there's all different kinds of things. And don't shoehorn yourself into it or put yourself in a corner like this is all I want to do. I had no idea how to be a traffic reporter when I moved back to Denver from here the first time. No clue. But I got a job. It was a job. I got it. And I ended up doing it for 8 years. And then when the time came and I wanted to come back to Northeast Colorado, I'd never been a news director before. I had no clue what I was doing. But I thought to myself, I never did traffic before either. I did that. I'm coming back here. It's easier because I knew these guys before, and I knew that if I came back, they'd help me out too. So that's part of the reason, so keep your mind open as to what you could do. When I worked for Wayne the first time, I was in sales and on air. I didn't know how to do sales, but I just did the best I could. So just be prepared to learn something new, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be a bad thing. It'll just be a different thing. So yeah.
Great. So before we go in, just to ask you real
Sure.
quick,
Yeah.
you've given us a little bit of an idea of what your journey was like
Mhm.
within radio.
Sure.
But what was it like? I mean, did you have to take specific classes?
What
Or
I did, this is how I started. I started off in 2001, and I went to work as green as a blade of grass. And I went to work and I got a job with no experience in radio. This is rare. This doesn't happen too often, but I got to work at KLZ in Denver at 560. At that point in 2001, in the summer of 2001, they had what they called the real oldies format, which was the 50s and 60s, which is one of my favorite music genres. So I applied and got a job with them, working part-time for 12 weeks during the summer of 2000. 9/11 happened, and about a week or two later, they fired everyone and killed the format. Just, they blamed it on what had happened. But that being said, I kind of got bit by the radio bug at that point. So a couple of years went by, and I took a correspondence course through the Columbia School of Broadcasting, which is no longer around, unfortunately. I got a certificate from there. And then in Denver, at that point, it was about 2000, late 2003 or 4. And the Ohio Center for Broadcasting had relocated or had opened up a campus in Denver. It was off of Colfax and Wadsworth. They are now called the Colorado Media School. But I went to the Ohio Center for Broadcasting and took their year-long course. It was a crash course in radio and television. And during that time, I ended up getting an internship at Cool 105 at Denver. And I worked there. And through that year that I was there and learning, everything I had to do to learn as far as getting into the business, after I was done, about 6 months later, I was working at the school as an IA, and I got a call from Wayne.
What's an IA?
Instructional assistant.
Okay.
Basically, glorified coffee maker. Can you get the papers for me? Yeah, that's what I did. So that kind of a thing. So when you're at school, also be on your best behavior, because the schools, if you go to a good broadcast school, that'll be your good reference to get a job. So make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you're kind to your teachers and you show up for class and do what you're supposed to do, because that'll help you get a job. I knew a lot of people that went through broadcast school, got their first job, and they didn't pay attention in school, and they didn't last too long because they had no idea what they were doing once they got there. So pay attention in class. So then I came out here and I worked for Wayne for 4.5 years, almost 5 years, from early 2006 to late 2010. And I was out in Ray, and I was doing all kinds of things out here, like I mentioned. And then I went back to Denver. And the reason I went back to Denver is, an old friend of mine, girlfriend, anyway. So that I went back to Denver, and I ended up teaching at the school that I had graduated from at the Ohio Center for Broadcasting before they became Colorado Media School. Through there, I met somebody named Nia Bender, and Nia Bender was the traffic person, the head person in charge of traffic at Total Traffic and Weather Network in Denver, which is a subsidiary of iHeart. I met her at the school. She called me up one evening and said, "Hey, I've got a job opening for an overnight shift for traffic." I was looking for a job in broadcasting, hadn't found anything yet. I took it, I'd worked graveyard shifts in my life during the 90s when I was working in the grocery store. So I thought, well, here I go back in graveyards again. And that job, I actually ended up working 7 days a week. I worked Friday nights and Saturday nights from 10 p.m. to about 6 a.m. And then Monday through Friday, I was there from 10 to 2 every day. So it was one of those things, I was part-time, but I was working a lot, just showing, hey, I'm here. And then about a year later, I got full-time position with Total Traffic and did that for over 8 years, like I said. And then the pandemic happened. We actually got sent home, and I actually did traffic from my house.
Wow.
And in fact, the traffic center that I was working at, they were out for 2 years and 7 months. They just went back in November of last year from the pandemic. So just an example. But during the pandemic, I left, came out here, and I've been out here since. So there you have. That's in a nutshell right there.
Thank you.
I know I'm a long-winded or everything. I hope I'm not boring the heck out of everybody. But,
no, it's perfect. We really enjoy hearing everybody's journey and stories of where they started and how they got to where they are.
And here's the thing. If you've got a thing that you want to do in radio, hold on to that thing. I do have a thing called the Tiger Rock and Oldies Show. Over here, this is what I did for the 4 years I was out in Ray. I created my own 50s rock and roll show. I'm going to do it again. The reason it's taken me so long is the technology has changed. When I started back in the mid-2000s, there were these things called CD players that you could just put a CD in and go, and that was it. Now those are gone, so I have to work, convert it to air, all my music, and figure it out from there. But that's still keeping me going. So if you've got a thing or a show or an idea you have, take it with you to those small, medium market stations, because those are the places where those things can be born. They're looking for revenue. I mean, they're looking, hey, you got a show that you can produce and I can make money off of for the station, that kind of a thing. That's something that you really need to consider. So, there you have
Awesome. So
it.
there's room for creativity.
There is room for creativity. If you can come up with a creative, good idea. Scott Roberts has a great show he does on Wednesday evenings called Morgan Sports Talk. It's fantastic. It's a well-produced show. I mean, that's the kind of thing. So if you got an idea for a talk show or a program or anything you want to do, and it's something that you could put on the air and maybe sell, there you have it right there. So,
Great.
okay. All righty. Okay. So we'll leave this very bright office and come out here. This is where we get our coffee and everything in the morning. And then in here it's kind of loud because the things that are operating, but here's all the kind of the ugly guts of the station. Now, don't ask me what all this stuff does because I have no clue. But there you have it. And I'll tell you something, Wayne is very hands-on. He's a hands-on owner. The owners of small, medium market stations, they want to be where they're at. Wayne can be anywhere he wants in the world, but he wants to be here. He's a Northeast Colorado guy. So if they own stations in these areas, those people, generally speaking, want to be out here. And Wayne comes in every morning. He comes right in here and checks all the equipment. Makes sure. Again, not pretty back here, but it works. So there you go. All right. Watch some stuff there. It's a doozy. Okay. And then we'll just pop in here in a second. We'll make sure that Mr. Waters is okay. That's okay if we come in here for a second? Okay, come on in here. This is the main studio here at KFTM where all the magic happens in the morning, as you can tell. And we've got all of our awards along this wall. And then actually, neat story, these are all the people that have worked at this station over the decades.
Wow.
Over the many decades. My name ain't here yet, and I don't know why. Maybe that's a sign.
This means Carol hasn't painted it up there.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Time he knows the ups, downs, ins, and outs of this business. That's where he sits, and he commands KFTM during the day. And when Scott and I come in, we sit right here. And when John interviews guests, they can come and sit here or here, and he interviews them, so on and so forth. So I don't know if you have any questions you want to ask Mr. Waters over here, but or if you want to
Sure.
walk
Okay.
over,
Yeah,
on over there.
closer.
To show you what I look at. Watch out for my backpack there. So this computer here, this is our program log. This is what runs everything that's on air. So for example, right now, this song up here, Cool the Gang, is what's on air right now. Then it's followed up by a voice track from a service that we use called Local Radio Networks. So it sounds like they're live here in studio, but they're really not. They're off-site, and they voice track it for us. I'm live from 6 to 9 in the mornings. The rest is voice tracked. And then this is the program log that says what's coming up and all throughout the day. And if we need to go in and change something, we can. The computer runs automatically if we tell it to do that. Like here's that voice track.
Get down on it on Wednesday, it's Tim, and somebody could get down on being a millionaire tonight. Is the Powerball jackpot is up to 360 million big bucks. Bill Collins is coming.
So it'll run itself. If in the mornings when we go live on the air, I just switch this to live, and now it'll do what I tell it to do. Okay. And then I can tell it to stop after this break. I can tell it to stop after this event that's going on right now, or I can tell it to keep going. I'll go back to the bottom. Now the computer's running.
Nice. So what has your journey been like on your way? Like you said, you've done this for 40 years, right?
When I started, everything was hands-on. It was very much, we played records, we had carts, all the ads were on carts. So each hour we had a handwritten program log. Each hour we would pull all the carts for that hour, get them ready to go. And so, I mean, we were constantly changing things, queuing records. It was very hands-on. Then over the years, it's gotten more and more what's the word? Where the computer takes care of it.
Automated.
Automated.
Yeah,
Thank you. That was the word. You know, it went from records to CDs, and then CDs to satellite, and then now from satellite for us anyway, to everything's on a hard drive. So everything's in-house. It's on a hard drive, and we do everything through the internet. You'll notice we don't have any CD players. We don't have any of that. I couldn't play a CD in here if I wanted to.
Yeah, we were just talking about that too in the other room, you know, when I did my show, how we had CD players. Well, what's a CD player?
Yeah, that's a thing of the past. So everything's done over the internet. I do an afternoon show on one of our FMs, and so I've already voice tracked that for today, and it sounds like I'm live in the studio while that's on.
That's what I was showing in the other room, in the other studio, the voice tracking.
Okay.
So, for instance, John is on after my voice track. You know, it's usually Lindsay, but I'm filling in for Lindsay, and then John is on after me. So,
from 2 to 6 this
Yeah.
afternoon. So it's the technology has made a huge difference from, you know, when I started, 1984 was when I started, and everything was records, cassette tapes, reel-to-reel tapes, and carts. And now it's none of that.
Right.
None of it.
So it sounds like, I mean, being adaptable was a huge part of you succeeding in your career.
Absolutely, and embracing the technological changes. I always tried to look at what's coming up and try to get on it right away. For an example, the first station I worked at, just when CDs were starting to come out, and I mean, 99% of people didn't own a CD yet, but I bought a CD player, my own, and I would bring it into the station every day and hook it up. And then I'd make a big deal about, now this song's off of compact disc. And I mean, that was an amazing, people would actually stop into the station to see what it looked like and how it worked. You know, and now we don't even use those. They're done. So I've always tried to stay on top of it and ahead if possible of what's coming up. So I do a lot of research. You know, what's the next big thing that's coming? How do we stay on top of it? I love Wayne as our owner. He's very much that same way. We may be in a small market, but we don't have to act that way. We don't have to sound that way. So we're not your typical small town radio station or
Right.
group of stations.
Is there any piece of advice that you would give to students about, you know, maybe that they're interested in having a career in radio?
Yeah, actually, this is going to sound weird, but it's not about you. It's about the listeners. So yes, you want to be the best you can be, but don't get that, you know, I'm a superstar mentality. It's about the listener, and do everything you do with that in mind. How is this being perceived? How is this bettering the life of the listener? And boy, if you can come from that aspect with that humility, I think that will take you a long ways. That's why I'm still here 40 years later. I've been at this station for 23 years. And I have people all the time tell me how much they look forward to listening to me in the morning, but it's not because it's about me. It's that relationship that we've built because it's about them. So
Great.
there you go.
Thank you so much.
There's my quote unquote wisdom.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Right on, John. Thanks, man.
Sure.
Appreciate it. So, it's a nice big room and everything, and it's a great place to be in the morning. So, yeah, we'll go right in here next. And thank you, John. Let's see. Let me go. Scott, you got a couple of minutes here? All righty. You want to go ahead and come on in here? This gentleman here is Mr. Scott Roberts. He's the sports director for KFTM for Medialogic Radio. He's kind of the head honcho here. As you can see, he's in here every morning too. You know, before 5 or right at 5, doing his thing, and he'll be in here at that time, even if he just arrived back in town the night before 2 a.m. from a late sports broadcast. So again, when I was talking to you about sports earlier, here's a guy to talk to about that. And if you want to do sports, I mean, it's really something to be done in a small market, medium market.
Yeah, it's a big part of what we do here is just all community. So community definitely supports their local team. So we do as many games as we can, no matter where they're at or how long it takes.
Awesome. How did you get into doing this?
I was actually in high school and they had a job opening at the radio station that I worked at, or where I lived in Wyoming. And I made a joke to the jock that did this job in sports and stuff. And I was like, hey, I'm going to apply for this job. And he's like, go ahead, I'll get you the job. So I started working 6 to midnights on Sundays. And I played on reel to reels, which we don't have those anymore either. But that's how I got into it. And I went to school and was in North Dakota for a little over a year. Then I came here and I've been here for 16 years.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds like, from what I gather from each of you, is that there's a lot of hands-on training and schooling that needs to happen.
Yeah. And one thing with anything, you just got to be able to get comfortable with it. So it just takes practice. Not everybody's Joe Buck when they put on a microphone. It does take a little bit of figuring it out, but it's just keep doing it until you kind of figure out the way you want to sound.
Nice. So 3 of our North Star skills that we have, we work with schools in the I-76 corridor, are leadership, integrity, and communication. And it seems like with leadership, I was just thinking about it with how you took charge, you decided you wanted to do it, right? So
Yeah.
you showed leadership that way in making your career a go.
Yeah, we have, so I'm not the only one that does sports. We actually have 5 stations that cover sports. So when it comes time to covering a big event like state wrestling, or basketball, or football games, we all have to kind of work together, whether it's getting sponsors involved. So there is a lot of communication that happens between all of us that needs to be done. So everybody that it wants to be a sponsor gets what they sponsored, and then it sounds good. And then we've got all of our ducks in a row, and everybody knows kind of what their role and responsibility is.
Nice.
So there is a lot of conversation. It's not as much anymore because I think the youngest guy that we have here has been here for 3 years. So he's kind of suffered through and kind of experienced all that's what to experience. So when it comes time, like right now, we're starting to work on state wrestling. We'll get into state basketball, but state wrestling's coming up at the end of February, and then regional wrestling. So we kind of do things a little different as a company with how we promote and how we broadcast our events that are that big. So it does take a lot of correlation to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everybody understands their responsibilities, which is a big thing. We want to sound good while we're out there doing it. So that's the plan we got to put in place first.
Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks, Scott. Appreciate it, man. All righty. So, and then, just like any other place, you got, cabinets and refrigerators and stuff like that. Here we'll go in here. And this is the big boss's office in here. This is where he comes in every single day and does his magic. Basically, he's here Monday through Friday. He has certain days of the week that he's here. He stays in Fort Morgan. He has certain days he goes to the Sterling offices, and he has certain days he goes to Ray. So he kind of sticks with that schedule for the most part each and every week. But he's really hands-on. He likes to get out there, talk to us, talk to all the people, and be out there. And if there's a problem with the station, he's on it. If there's an issue with one of the stations not sounding good, he'll drive out to a transmitter. He'll drive out wherever he has to try to fix the problem. That's why I like working for him. He's also very open-minded, hands-on, that kind of thing. A couple of things I was thinking about as we were taking the tour. If you really want to have longevity in radio, I can't recommend enough small and medium market radio. Nothing against the major markets, okay? Nothing against the Denvers or the LAs or the New Yorks. There's plenty of opportunity there. But if you want a long-standing job in a community, I would seriously look at small, medium market radio. Those are the places where people will work for decades and retire and be happy, that kind of a thing. Generally speaking, unless you really screw something up, getting fired from a smaller medium market radio station is fairly rare in that sense. They're looking for people that want to work in these areas. It is a lot more fun, at least before the pandemic, it was a lot more fun to go to the big cities and have that big city life, so on and so forth. One thing you got to think about, though, is the cost of living, what you'll be making. Radio can be, you can make a decent living in this business, but it can also be, fairly lower income for what a lot of people may be used to. Whereas, if you're in the small and medium markets, it costs less to live out in those areas than it does, say, in the Denvers too. Another thing that I've thought about lately with radio is that the technology for radio itself is fairly the same. Look at newspapers. How many newspapers, how have newspapers been faring over the decades? I mean, kind of dicey lately. They've gone online, they've adjusted. You got to pay for a newspaper, whether you buy it physically or you look at it online. Television used to be free. Now it's not free anymore. You got hundreds of channels, but you got to pay for it. Even the free networks you got to pay for. Radio, go buy a radio, turn it on. There you have it. You know, I mean, seriously, whether you turn on the internet or whatever, you know, you got to pay for the internet, but if you turn on a streaming radio station is there, you go buy a radio anytime you go into, you're going to have a radio station there somewhere, and it's free. And I think that's the appeal that radio still has, is that, yeah, there are commercials. There's commercials on paid television. There's commercials on a paid podcast. There's commercials on a radio station, but you don't have to pay for the radio station. Just flip it on, you know, in your car at home, and you got tunes and you got commercials and they're fun and that kind of a thing. So something to consider as far as, you know, when you're looking at radios, like, is radio still viable after all these years? Yeah, and that's part of the reason for it, as well as everything else we've been talking about today, the community involvement, that connection that John was saying that you have with the listeners. There's an intimacy there that you don't really have anywhere else. You know, when you know, if you can do that kind of show where you're like, hey, how's it going, man? It's just you and me. There's that intimate radio relationship you'll have with that listener. So just a couple of things that keep me in this business, and something I think about. And it's like when they talk about radio's relevancy, it's like it's still relevant after all these decades. It really is. People tune into it, people like it, people enjoy it. So
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
yeah, you're welcome.
Amanda, do you or anyone else have any questions to ask before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I think you guys covered it all in studio, and I'm really, really thankful for you sharing all that you did today. I know our students got a lot out of it.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, we will wrap up. Thank you so much, Pete, for
You're
your
welcome.
wisdom and your experience that you've shared today.
I was glad to help. Glad to help. I hope you guys learned something for it. I hope it helped out. So you're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.